first encounter. My husband and I think we dodged a serial killer. 2 years ago in the winter, my husband and I bought and moved to a farm in small town Appalachia. We decided to go down to our local Tractor Supply to buy a propane tank. As we were in the checkout line, a man in his late 50s, I assume, walked in and stared at us. He grabbed a random women's shirt off a shelf, then turned back, stared at us some more, and stood behind us in line. He stood so close I could feel his breath on my neck. I was extremely uncomfortable, but I figured it's a small town, so everyone is just overly nice. So I turned toward him, smiled, nodded, and said, "Good morning," hoping the man would feel as uncomfortable as I did and back up a bit. He did not. He started talking to us, initially starting with pleasant small talk. "The weather is getting quite cold. This line is taking forever." Telling us about him picking up his great aunt from the airport in 2 hours, etc. Then quickly going into more intrusive territory. "Where are you guys from? Where are you living now? How old are you guys?" For context, though I was in my late 20s and my husband only a few years behind me, our baby faces could have easily passed for 20 to 21. When it was our turn to check out, I said, "Have a good day," to the man, and went up to the register. As the guy behind the register started to explain their propane pricing, the man started to flip out. I mean, he started yelling at the poor 17-year-old kid working his weekend job, saying, "I can't believe y'all are charging them so much for a propane tank, and they're a young newlywed couple. Why can't you give them a break?" He just kept going on, cussing beneath his breath at the guy behind the counter. Then he once again turned to us. "Hey, I have a 100-pound tank. I'm not using it at my house. I'll let y'all have it for free if you want. You'll just need to come with me." My husband thanked him but declined. He said, "Are you sure? My house is only 20 minutes from here. I could even give you 2 tanks." Again, my husband declined. He continued, "We have to do it now, though, because I have to go to the airport and leave town in 2 hours. This was a slip-up we hadn't noticed until we got home later that day. At this point, I said, "No, thank you," in a bit more assertive tone. Getting what I assumed was annoyed, he dropped his items and stormed out. As we went outside to go get our tank filled up, the man pulled up into a parking spot next to the fill-up area in his pickup truck. He got out and went back at it. "You should really think about getting a second tank. It'll save you a trip and would last you longer," he continued. "If you don't want to both go, only one of y'all can just come and ride with me, and the other can meet me at my place." I replied, "No, thank you, we're good." Then he said, "Come on, it's a small town, it's safe. I would never hurt such a lovely young couple." At this point, the outdoor employee came out of the propane area and told him to get the fuck out of there and to stop bothering us. So he got in his truck that did not have a license plate and drove off. The other day, while filling our tank up, the guy helping us asked us about that day and if we ever saw the guy again. Apparently, he comes by in the winters when it's quiet and only talks to young couples. Major creepy vibes.
Second encounter. I think my mom's friend is a serial killer or serial offender. I'll preface this by saying I was raised by a killer. My grandfather and grandmother raised me, and when I was 17, my grandfather stalked, kidnapped, and murdered my grandmother because she wanted a divorce. I also married my ex-husband at 22, later to find out that his dad was a prolific pedophile, raping his sisters as young as 6 years old. Both are in prison for life. But these are men I was extremely close to. For a while, I was almost attracted to danger, and the warning signs were easily ignored and considered normal. Until I started listening to my intuition, and now I can spot these predatory-type people out. They know I recognize them. It's like an unspoken thing, like when you are at a party and you and someone else see something funny, but don't know each other well enough to say it out loud, so you just look at each other and kind of laugh telepathically. It's only happened twice, as I don't really get out like that. And to be frank, there aren't that many people like this out there, and if they are out there, I'm not adept enough at pointing them all out. But I could tell almost immediately with this man. My mom's friend is a truck driver. My mom has been taking my daughter to play with his daughter on little play dates. They met at a church group. Come to find out later that this church group is a weird extremist version of Christianity where they believe all white people are evil and they are the chosen ones, rather than the Jews and a whole bunch of other weird shit. It's a cult. I became uncomfortable with my mom taking my daughter to these playdates once I realized how disturbed their combined beliefs were. I didn't want to cut off the playdates cold turkey for the sake of the kids, so I started taking time off work to join them and told my mum he wasn't allowed around my daughter without me being there. When I first met him, he was very charming and sweet, funny, but annoyingly jolly and clearly trying hard to appear innocent and sweet. He used a soft voice to make me comfortable and incessantly talked about being protective to make himself seem more manly. He told me weird things like that his daughter wasn't allowed to wear pants, only dresses. Then he kept offering me drinks, one after the other, while we were hanging out with our kids. Not a big deal, but I am not a drinker, especially not on play dates, and made that very clear to him. While we were sitting down watching the kids, at the beach at this time, he set up a little blanket area and told me I could come closer. I did not know how to react other than to say I needed to sit where I was sitting to be the kids better. I already had been sitting on my own blanket. He kept pushing and said I could see them from here. Here, being basically on his lap on the blanket he'd set up. He stared at me silently for what seemed like an hour before I scooted slightly closer to him to not make things more awkward for everyone around. I sat on the edge corner of the blanket and tried to avoid eye contact and focused on the kids, being sure not to have him or get close. I got weird vibes, but figured he was obviously weird because of his culty beliefs and just shrugged it off as him being odd. But my gut was burning for days after that first meeting. I also noticed that he spoke really badly about women, especially his kid's mum. I figured he was just a misogynistic weirdo. He went on a truck run, and when he came back, immediately wanted to get the kids together again. I told my mum that I had to be there, so we arranged a date and time where I wasn't working. We went to a paint studio for the kids, and again, the whole time he was offering me drinks. At an art studio, for kids, where no drinks were served. He even ran to a bar to go get a drink and then brought it into the children's art studio. A handful of beer as he was surrounded by kids painting bluey portraits. It was bizarre. We went from the art studio to a trampoline park, and as the kids were joking around and jumping and playing, he repeatedly picked me up and threw me into the foam ball pit, despite my clear discomfort and telling him I wasn't feeling well and asking him to stop. He then pulled me down on top of him while he was laying on the trampoline, to which I got very upset and stormed off, taking my daughter with me. At one point before that, I had gotten a friction burn on my wrist from sliding down the trampoline too fast, and he took my wrist and grabbed it hard, then pressed down on the open sore to taunt me. I DK if this man is just socially awkward or disturbed or what. But my body has never physically reacted so strongly to a person besides my ex-husband's father, who was a convicted pedo. I could not sleep for days. I started smoking cigarettes again after 10 years since I quit. My thoughts were racing constantly. I called my brothers and started telling them how odd it was, but ended up crying at the end of our conversations out of pure fear. My stomach was shaking. This lasted for about 2 weeks. Obviously can't say if he's a serial killer, but the truck driver occupation paired with his obvious devious nature is just not something I want to fuck with. Third encounter. Date with a psychopath? So, when I was around 20F, I was newly single and exploring the apps. I matched with this guy named Alex. He wasn't my usual type, but his profile seemed cool. Showed he was in school, had a car and job plus friends, so he didn't seem weird to me at all. We got to talking, and he seemed pretty into me, so we set up a date. He came to pick me up for a driving date. So basically, sitting in his car for hours, driving around. Yes, I don't know why I did this, but I blame it on being young and dumb. So he started driving. We drove for about 40 minutes all the way to downtown. Mind you, during these 40 minutes, he was blasting music at full volume with the windows down. Everyone on the sidewalk staring at us while he's screaming the lyrics out the window. When I brought up that I thought it was a little loud, he said, "Nah, everyone loves it." They, in fact, did not love it, I can assure you. Anyways, we get to the heart of downtown and he parks outside a very famous and prominent tower in the city and gets down on the ground and just stares at it. No warning, nothing. This is where I started to think he was a little strange. He then hopped up and said, "Let's go get some food now." It was very strange. So now we begin driving to get food, and he drives 2 cities outside of the one we're in. Essentially, we've been driving now for hours. While on this drive, he starts spewing racist BS, and then abruptly tells me that he is a very depressed and troubled person and asked me if I have ever done the slicey dicey to my wrists. With this, I was very taken aback and didn't really know what to say. I mean, I've known this man for a few hours at this point and didn't think conversation would get this deep. He confided in me and told me he had been hospitalized before for SH. At this point, the vibe he was giving off was scary and I started to feel in danger. But I was even more scared that if I offended him, something bad could happen. Let's not forget, I'm in his car, he has my home address, and I'm 2 cities out of mine. So I played nice. We finally got to a food spot and ate some dinner. At least he paid, right? Anyways, now's when it starts to get really creepy. We begin driving again, back to our city, but he keeps taking the long way, so our 1 hour drive turns more into a 3 hour drive. At this point, we're back in the city, but it's really late at night, around 11:30 p.m. This is when he goes into a dark neighborhood and he starts driving very fast around tight roads and corners. As he's doing this, I ask him to slow down because he's scaring me, and he turns and looks at me with no emotion and says, "You know, I've had some really hard days in my life." And I said, "I know you told me. I'm so sorry." Then he said, "I used to hurt so bad that I would come and drive my car just like this and kill squirrels so something else could hurt as much as I did." I was in shock. I was honestly very terrified with what he said, and not to mention his strangeness from the start. All I could do was ask if he still did it, and he said, "No, not anymore." I knew that wasn't true, but I thought if I offend him, he can easily overpower me, so play it nice again. At this point, we were very close to my home, about 10 minutes. Then abruptly, he asked if I've been to this park that's coming up. This park is at the bottom of a cliff, and it's the middle of the night. I have been to this park, but even if I hadn't, I would have said yes, because there was no way I wanted that man to drive me down there. He then said, "Oh, perfect. I haven't. You can show me around," and took a right and drove down the very dark road to the bottom of the park, where the parking lot was completely empty with about 6 street lights total. Needless to say, I thought I would be victim number 1. Since I'm here, I obviously wasn't, but his tone and mannerisms were so strange while we were there. He then basically forced me to kiss him pretty intimately and got handsy, while I kept pushing him off. It didn't escalate past that. And then he drove me home. I blocked his number and all socials after that, but I often wonder if I really did go on a date with a psychopath.